Well, I'm absolutely delighted now to be joined by the keynote speaker for the conference, Soledad O'Brien. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We really appreciate that.
That's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So you'll be talking to delegates in a minute. Give us a little bit of a flavor, if you will, about some of the things you'll be talking to them about.
Listen, I think as a reporter, really, you spend your life and your job interacting with the very people who are in this room, right? Reporting on communities. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is successful communities and how do you keep them intact. And we're in an interesting time in America right now where people seem very unhappy, and obviously the political debate and discourse has been very negative. So I'm really interested in talking to people about how to hear each other. And when you have demographic shifts in a community, you have to really make sure that you're listening to everybody, because obviously what we've seen over the last days and weeks and maybe even years has been people talking at each other, but not really hearing each other on all sides. So it's what my conversation's about. How do we really think about including people in conversations?
Because reading your book, you know, a lot of your work is within communities all around, not just the US, but all kind of over the world. How important do you think the role is of city managers within that dialogue that you're talking about?
You know, it's interesting. I think that a city manager who's a leader is priceless, right? And a city manager who can't figure out how to lead is a drag on a system. So how important depends on if they're moving the right direction or they're not. I think it's really critical. They're certainly in a position to affect great change, but I've seen so many mistakes made. And again, we're at a time when the demographic shifts are happening, are very sharp. And so you need someone who's really thinking about leading a bunch of different kinds of people around a bunch of different kinds of issues. So I think it depends on if the person really understands their job as a leader, not just the job that they've been hired to do.
Right, got you. In your book, one of the things that really struck me is your sense of optimism. You know, that you're...
I'm a nauseatingly optimistic person, really. It's like impossible to stomp it out of me.
Right, but in a couple of ways. You're always moving forward, and you're optimistic about America. You're optimistic about the strength of these communities, and yet, as you say, you know, we face more challenges, greater challenges than ever before. So you're still optimistic?
Yeah, always. Partly because I think at the end of the day, we're all on the same page. You know, the thing that's interesting when you're having a debate, say, about education, really, there's no one in the debate who's like, no, education shouldn't exist for people. Really, that person doesn't exist. We might be arguing over how to best affect that to happen, but we're never saying there's no person on the other side of the debate. Most people believe children should have a good education, right? We all believe that. So sometimes I think about reframing these conversations as we're not against each other. We have different strategies, we got to figure it out, but I think the same thing with healthy communities. There's really no one who's like, I think a community should be in poverty and dragging down the economy. Of course not. Everybody wants the same thing. They want the kids to go to school. They want them to do better than they're doing. They want them to be safe. Everybody, wherever you are in America and wherever you are around the globe, everybody pretty much wants that. And I think if you can tease that out and start thinking about bringing people together around sort of a shared value, you're in a better position to move forward successfully.
But one of the things in your book is looking at how communities move forward and how people have a shared identity and how important that shared identity is to be able to move forward. But I wonder if that shared identity is still as strong. So you talk about the education system. You talk about the people who aren't progressing through education. You were talking about immigration. You talk about immigration in the book. I mean, a lot of immigrants who are listening to some of the political discourse at the moment, do you think they still feel as engaged with America as you might?
Go and chat with a new Latino immigrant to this country. You have not seen that. There's a great statistic that says that immigrants who are going to be naturalized can pass that test for citizenship at a much higher rate than natural-born citizens, right? I mean, I know so many immigrants to the country who love the idea of America, right? They really understand. They know America's history sometimes better than people who are born here. So I don't think that that's true. I don't think that there's a sense that people don't like America. I think everybody is actually trying to figure out how to make it work. And what's happening is sometimes people are left out of the conversation and have been left out of the conversation. So, you know, part of what I think the job of a reporter is to tease out those stories and make sure we're elevating conversations to include different perspectives. Not necessarily right perspectives or wrong perspectives, but certainly just hearing somebody else's perspective on a situation I think can be interesting. And I think for a long time we just haven't done that. So I sort of, nauseatingly, optimistically believe that when you really listen and understand what someone's trying to tell you, as opposed to debating around the fluff and the noise,
Right.
you could actually make great progress.
Well, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
It's a great book.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.